Does the Prime Minister now accept that when he said that it was the law that trans women were women, he was wrong?
To conduct this debate with the care and compassion that it deserves, and I think that should unite the whole House.
I accept the ruling. That's what Starmer finally admitted after 6 days of complete silence on the Supreme Court's transgender decision. But did he actually answer the question about his previous statements that were proven wrong? Today's PMQs exposed what might be the most revealing exchange since Starmer took office. When directly challenged about misleading the public on biological sex and women's rights, the Prime Minister chose deflection over honesty, and the entire chamber erupted. You're about to witness exactly how it unfolded. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. For 6 days, nearly an entire week, Starmer maintained a calculated silence on the Supreme Court's transgender ruling. Let's be crystal clear. This wasn't a Prime Minister taking time for thoughtful reflection. This was political strategy in action, a deliberate manoeuvre to avoid addressing a ruling that demolished his previous legal interpretations. While Starmer remained conspicuously absent from the public discourse, the political landscape was far from quiet. Members of Parliament from across the spectrum were taking positions, making statements, and addressing this landmark ruling. Most tellingly, even members of his own party broke ranks.
Does the Prime Minister now accept that when he said that it was the law that trans women were women, he was wrong?
To conduct this debate with the care and compassion that it deserves, and I think that should unite the whole House.
The research confirms that Labour MP after Labour MP challenged the ruling, creating a significant rift within the party that Starmer simply couldn't ignore forever. Behind closed doors, one can only imagine the frantic communications within Labour headquarters. Staffers likely worked overtime crafting potential responses, measuring political fallout, and calculating the least damaging path forward. The Supreme Court ruling didn't just contradict Starmer's previous assertions on transgender issues, it utterly invalidated them. For a former Director of Public Prosecutions, this wasn't merely embarrassing, it was a fundamental challenge to his legal credibility. The legal implications of the ruling cut to the core of Starmer's previous stance. As a lawyer himself, Starmer surely understood the ruling's significance immediately.
It brings clarity and it will give confidence to women and, of course, to service providers in their everyday lives. I do think this is the time now to lower the temperature.
Yet rather than address it promptly, he chose silence. A silence that grew more deafening with each passing day. This wasn't indecision, it was damage control. What's particularly revealing is how this approach contradicts Starmer's self-portrayal as straightforward and honest. The evidence suggests a very different reality. As the research pointedly asks, why did it take him so long to respond? Isn't it because he was scared, Minister? The rhetorical question hits the mark. Fear, not contemplation, drove this extended silence.
The Equality and Human Rights Commission will now issue updated guidance, and it's important that that happens to continue to protect single-sex spaces based on biological sex, and we will.
As pressure mounted from both sides of the debate, Starmer finally found himself cornered. Conservative MPs demanded answers, media questions accumulated, and his own rebellious MPs had already staked out positions. The carefully orchestrated silence could no longer be maintained without causing even greater damage to his leadership. What we witnessed wasn't a leader taking time to formulate a thoughtful position, but rather a politician buying time while his team frantically crafted an evasive response. The 6-day gap wasn't about ensuring accuracy or showing respect for the ruling. It was about political self-preservation at the expense of clarity and leadership. Self-preservation quickly transformed into self-destruction during the most explosive PMQs in recent memory.
This government's approach and my approach has been as follows: to support and implement the Supreme Court ruling, and we will, but also to ensure that trans people are treated with respect, and we will, and to ensure that everybody is given dignity.
When directly challenged about his transgender stance, Starmer's carefully constructed facade crumbled under pressure, revealing a politician unwilling to face legal reality, even when confronted with the highest court's definitive ruling. The question itself was masterfully crafted, simple yet devastating in its precision. Starmer was asked directly whether he accepted that he had been categorically wrong about transgender women and the law. A question that demanded a binary response, yes or no, with political danger lurking in both options. Acknowledging his error would mean admitting a fundamental misunderstanding of the law, unthinkable for a former director of public prosecutions. Denying it would mean contradicting the Supreme Court itself. Starmer's response revealed everything. Rather than addressing the factual inconsistency between his previous statements and the court's ruling, he pivoted to platitudes about respect and dignity. A rhetorical sleight of hand designed to sidestep accountability. This transparent evasion triggered immediate pandemonium across the chamber. MPs erupted in shouts as points of order flew across the floor, with the Speaker struggling valiantly to maintain even a semblance of order. Perhaps most damning was Starmer's refusal to acknowledge the brave female MP who had been hounded out of his party for telling the truth, the very same truth the Supreme Court had now confirmed. This former Labour MP had maintained the legally correct position all along, yet rather than offering an apology, Starmer doubled down on his evasion. The contradiction couldn't be more stark. Here stood a man whose entire career was built on legal precision, now dancing around a straightforward legal question. For someone who once directed public prosecutions, his inability to acknowledge a clear legal interpretation error wasn't just baffling, it was deeply concerning. The reaction among Labour front benches told its own story. Uncomfortable glances were exchanged. Some stared fixedly at their phones. Others maintained painfully forced expressions of support. The collective body language screamed discomfort as their leader twisted himself into rhetorical knots. This wasn't simply political theatre. It was a moment of profound revelation. A prime minister revealing himself as a weather vane who twists in the wind, martideinin. To quote one critic, without the courage to do what was right. By refusing to acknowledge his previous incorrect statements while attempting to rewrite history, Starmer demonstrated that political expediency trumps principle, even when that principle is firmly established law. Now, in a pivotal moment during PMQs, the Prime Minister finally acknowledged the Supreme Court ruling on single-sex spaces. His response? To announce that the Equality and Human Rights Commission would issue updated guidance. This isn't just about correcting a policy position, it's about governance itself. Rather than personally owning his errors, Starmer deflected responsibility to the EHRC. He claimed this guidance would provide confidence to women and service providers. Yet his own confidence in admitting wrongdoing was conspicuously absent. The reappointment of Baroness Falconer as EHRC chair might signal seriousness, but the fundamental question persists. How can the public trust a leader who outsources accountability when cornered by truth?